The unions have been throwing the term work choices around quite liberally today. How hard are you expecting the unions and Labor, for that matter, will fight these changes? Are we really looking at a work choices style political war over these reforms?
Good afternoon to you, Ash. Look, it does look a little bit like Work Choices 2.0, does it not? But remember, if we go back down the time tunnel to 2007, the economy was in a very different state than it is now. Back then, the economy was going gangbusters. Now, we're in recession courtesy of COVID. So the circumstances are very different. I do find it a little interesting listening to Christian Porter then, when talking about the fact that, and admitting effectively that this emergency provision that they're now talking about for those businesses that are struggling, that this did not come up in the 150 hours of discussion now between the unions, the business community and the government. If this is so important to the government, you wonder why it was not raised during that period. But I do wonder, yes, how this is going to play out in these very, very different economic circumstances, whether the unions and the Labor Party will be able to get the same kind of traction that they did when Greg Combet led the campaign against work choices in the Howard era. Very, very interesting, with the possibility of an election coming up late next year. Also wonder how the crossbench in the Senate will look at all of this, because on the face of it you might think that One Nation would gobble up what the government's doing, but they do have quite a few blue-collar voters, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well. So, look, it's going to be very much a very strategic game that goes on from here. It does seem to me that Sally McManus and Michelle O'Neill have been pretty effective over recent weeks, but then again, so too Christian Porter, as we saw today. I think it's going to be very, very interesting indeed.
And we are standing by, just so our viewers know, to take our viewers to a news conference with Anthony Albanese, the Leader of the Opposition. So we'll see how Labor's framing this debate very shortly as well. No doubt it'll be a big one for question time this afternoon too. Jim, the other big reform Parliament's been grappling with today is the government's plans to force the tech giants into a media deal. This news media bargaining code would be world first in terms of a law aiming to essentially get the big tech companies to pay for some news content and have a commercial deal with providers. We're still waiting for a response formally from the tech giants. We know they're not happy about it, but the Minister, Paul Fletcher, seemed to suggest this morning on Sky News that he sees threats of them abandoning Australia as an empty one.
Look, I think this is an interesting first step, I would say. Look, clearly, I think it is in Australia's public interest that these tech giants do pay for some of their content. The argument that they are simply technology providers is, in my view, just complete nonsense. I am a little intrigued about the loopholes that are in what's being proposed. That is that Instagram and YouTube appear to be out of it. And I'll tell you a little anecdote about this, Ash, which is this, that during the lockdown in Victoria, I was interested that some of younger people that I came across were really engaged with what was going on with the lockdown, Daniel Andrews, etc., etc. And if you asked them where they were getting their information from, it was from Instagram. And Instagram is a significant news site for, Generation X and so on and so forth, not for people my age. So I do wonder about that being left out of it, and YouTube as well. And so it will be interesting to see how the formal response from the tech giants goes, and whether they are prepared to go this far, whether, on the other hand, they see this as the thin edge of the wedge in terms of this being an international precedent and having implications for them overseas as well. But look, I think it is a very good first step, and a very interesting one indeed.